Today I'm going to talk about something I'm really passionate about. Coming up with something I'm really passionate about was really bloody hard. Clear, concise communication. Because that's something really vulnerable you got to do on camera. And I mentioned the other day in one of these things, in one of these 30-day challenge videos, was that I'm not a huge fan of favorites. I could almost even talk about that as one of my things I'm passionate about. And there's so many things I'm passionate about that, say that more clearly, so many things that I'm passionate about that it's hard to choose one. Now, I've actually gone through and I've come along on something, and there's also things I'm passionate about that perhaps I don't really want to say. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I mean, what does passionate mean? Does it mean controversial? What does passionate mean? I mean, I literally made a video almost entirely on that purpose the other day. I made a video about what to do when you're changing careers, and there's a lot of people that make the argument that you should do what you're passionate about. There's people that make the argument that you shouldn't do what you're passionate about. Not a single one of them defined what they meant by passionate. I mean, is that what you love? Is love the same as passion? This leading into one of the issues I'm particularly passionate about, and that's communication. Clear, concise communication. Now, I've got an IT background, so some of this conversation is going to enter into the IT space. Just let me go. There's a big habit of mine is forgetting to start my timer, and I'm going to start that for us now. That started. In IT particularly, I find it really hard. It's probably one of the main reasons that I'm finding myself getting out of that industry. And I don't know if it's an IT specific thing. I imagine that happens across the board. I've spoken to people in other industries and I've seen similar problems and similar issues that I find in IT world happen in other things. So perhaps it's the corporate world, perhaps it's just an aspect of running businesses in a capitalistic society. I don't know, but communication just seems to be such a painful thing that people love to pay lip service to. The amount of places I've worked where they said you need to be a good communicator, and they're not good communicators themselves. They seem to believe they are, but what's this opinion when it's like, I said something, if you don't understand it, you're a bad communicator. Oh, I don't like that very much at all. Now, I've worked on teams where we've worked in what we call scrum teams. It's where you run through a project and you do it in iterations. And so you get together in teams and you do little workshops to come up with what you're going to do over the next sprint of work. And a sprint might be a week, 2 weeks, a month. It's generally about 2 weeks. And even then, you're coming up with writing what they call user stories, which is designed to improve communication. You write your tickets, you write your little piece of work and what needs to be done in the form of what they call a user story. So you may have a user profile and you say something like, imagine you've got a jobs listing website that you're trying to build and someone needs to be able to see a list of jobs that they search for. So you go, as a user, when I access the search page and I type a keyword, I'll find jobs that match that keyword. That's an oversimplified example of it, but that's the kind of thing. I mean, and then people pay lip service to that and they just throw it out and they use it like a formula and just throw it on there. Things like writing testing documents and stuff like that. That comes along, but then you enter into the open source world. Now, open source is a form of software. Is it a form? Open source is software that is basically written voluntarily. You've got access to the code. Nobody owns it. You can take that code, you can modify that code, you can change the software any way you like. You can give that code to other people. You can compile it. You can change it. The only thing you can't do is give that license away give that software away without including the license along with that. So that's something I have a lot of background in. As my background as a web developer, I use a lot of open source software. In fact, my specialty was using Drupal, which is a content management system, which is basically a piece of software used for giving you an interface to create content for a website. It can be themed to look all sorts of fancy things, but it does all sorts of other stuff. It's quite complicated. It's an enterprise grade version of WordPress. If you've heard of WordPress, that's what Drupal is. Sophisticated, stable, enterprise-grade WordPress. Now, so I've worked in their ticketing system. It's often you open what they call an issue. So if you find a bug or you want to request a new feature, things like that. You can open an issue on Drupal's website. Now, it's a wonderful community. I love the community so much. It's one of the absolute best things about Drupal. And however, I find the communication in there can be really confronting, or not confronting, challenging. It's a hurdle. It's a hurdle for someone like myself. I have technical ability. I've been working with Drupal for 15 years. I've clearly proven myself as being able to be a sophisticated, proficient Drupal developer. And yet often I'll be in the issue queue on an issue I've opened, and somebody will reply with a comment and I just get completely bamboozled. I'm really passionate about it being clear, and by clear, what I often mean is non-ambiguous. I'm very passionate about not using abbreviations, and it's something that I find rampant in the community, not just in Drupal, in open source generally, in IT generally. And it's something that's just brought up all the time. I can't go a day without coming across multiple abbreviations. And it's something you do see in social media, things like Facebook and that, you know, what have we got? Like LOL for laugh out loud, you know, BRB, be right back, these sort of things. But I just find in IT, we use them for really sophisticated things. That happens in government as well, where, you know, somebody will have a big, long organization name for a certain section of government, and they'll come up with a short abbreviation and start referring to it by its letters. Now, the irony that really gets to me is that there are organizations that I have found both in the US and in, where is it? In Australia. I'm just remembering that I need to modify my tone and stuff, and getting passionate, I managed to portray that, I believe. And also in Australia, there's organizations that actually advocate for accessible content. Now, accessible meaning that it's easy to be accessed by people with disabilities. A great obvious use case is for blind people to be able to access a website. You need to have their screen readers be able to transcribe that website and stuff like that. And both of these, and particularly in the government, you also need the things that are written and published on government websites to be written in a plain language so that anybody can understand it. It's really important. I mean, when you're trying to give out a message that's important to the population, it needs to be able to be understood by that population. Now, in both circumstances that I've seen, both in the US and in Australia, there's rules about abbreviations. And there's particularly, what was really, really ironic about it was that there's a organization in the US, a government-funded, government-sponsored department called the Plain Language and Accessibility in something, right? But it's a long name. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But they use the acronym PLAIN, P-L-A-I-N. And the irony that that's what they call themselves when, see, and I can't even remember their full name because everywhere you look for them, they're just referred to as plain everywhere. And it's the, obviously their name's just made to fit into the word plain because they advocate for plain language, right? And their name doesn't, it should be descriptive. They are the Plain Language Accessibility Initiative Association of the Plain Language and Accessibility Initiative of the nation. I don't know what it is, but see, it's all made up just to fit into the word plain. Yet they themselves are the ones that have a document that says not to do specifically that, not to refer to the organizations by their little written names and stuff. And I just find it, personally, I find it hard. There's a big, strong case to be made that I'm neurodivergent. I haven't been tested. I haven't been diagnosed. But my life story will tend to back that up, I believe. And that's where I'm coming from on this a bit. And it is an accessibility issue. This one in particular is one of the pointers to that, is that when you read up on this stuff, you do find that one of the symptoms of ADHD itself is an ability to deal with that kind of language, to not process that very well, and when things are ambiguous and not clear. And so I just find it quite difficult, and I bring it up in the Drupal world because there's so many people that just fall back on this stuff. I'll open a comment, and not only is it already a complicated technical thing that they're discussing, and the story behind it's quite technical, and all the different moving parts about the bug or the issue or the feature are hard to comprehend. But then they come along with language that is ambiguous. It uses abbreviations like that, and it's some of the abbreviations, just things like this. When I it's very hard for me to come up with an explicit verbatim example, but you can imagine if I've written a paragraph describing a very complex issue, and someone replies with something like, "This is not how it works in the FMLOC." And I'm just lost, because already, what's this? Right? This is not how it works and you go, what's this? I've talked about 6 different damn things, right? And any one of those could be what you're talking about. Grammatically, it should be the last one, but I don't know if you're following the correct grammar. Do you mean the whole lot of them as a whole? And what the hell's the FLMEU? You know, and these things really get to me, and it's something I seem to be particularly passionate about. I've definitely done my 10 minutes. I don't know how I've gone with I've put it in here a little bit, coming in and lowering my voice. It's an interesting exercise, this one, to speak about what you're passionate about and then measure your verbal ups and downs and varying. I've worked with the volume, but maybe not the tone. So something maybe I can work into this. I plan on doing this exercise again, perhaps for another 30 days. I might come up with an advanced one so I can go through this and repeat it. This might turn into my vlog. It seems that I'm doing this every day and talking about things. But that today was effectively my rant on clear communication. And we're done. Thank you, and see you tomorrow.